Hey everyone, today we have Shayak Mazumder, CEO and co-founder of Eunimart. Now, Eunimart is a platform for e-commerce sellers that accelerates organic growth with solutions that support end-to-end business operations. Now, Shayak has founded multiple companies in his day, and today he is a public speaker, a mentor, and serves as an advisor for several startups. I'm sure we're going to uncover a ton of great insights here. So with that said, Shayak, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Shine.
Great to have you here. So Shayak, let's dive right in. Let's talk about the founding story of Eunimart.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Something I love going back to. I think it was, a little bit about my background. I've served in the Indian Navy for 10 years. I used to be a nuclear biological chemical warfare specialist, a helicopter operator, and the youngest officer in the history of the Indian Navy to make it to staff rank. So I left the Navy after serving for about 10 years. And then I started a few hotels and restaurants in Goa. That's by the beach in India. That was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Took over a broken down property from scratch, and from there tried to really learn everything about that business, because it was the first time. I literally have no one in business in my whole family. There's a lot of learning for me. So some of the interesting things about how I started out doing those things, for example, these were broken down cottages, right? So the first sort of stuff that I did was I kind of took cardboard and put it up on the walls and then painted it myself, like kind of like a do-it-yourself project. And then I went to the top of the hill, cut a lot of grass, put it on top of cycle rickshaw, came back and put it on the top of the cottages, on the roofs, to make it look really pretty. Then I took some paint and whitewashed everything, so it started looking very pretty. I learned how to build a website myself, because, I'm talking about back in 2012, I had no idea how to build a website. So I built a website myself. Then I went and figured out that you could sell online. So I started selling online. And all this happened in a span of just about a month. Okay, so in just about a month from taking over that business. And so remember, I had no money. So I borrowed some amount of money from my dad to start that business. And in exactly 3.5 months, I paid my dad back all the money that I'd taken as a loan from him. So my dad was super upset with me because I'd left this prestigious career in the armed forces and started the small hotel by the beachside. Then finally said, okay, I'm going to come down. I want to see what you're doing. So he came down to Goa and he sat, with me in the hotel for about a month, saw the whole business, and then, he was very happy with it. I had one staff, just one other guy working with me, and we had 9 cottages. We had to take care of everything from morning to evening. So, and the place was, a den of all sorts of inequities. So you had prostitutes coming in, you had druggists coming in, and you had to prevent all that sort of stuff, build a reputation, build sort of partnerships with the local bus drivers, car drivers. And, in about 3.5 months, the place had suddenly grown a reputation that it was a family place. Why? Because I just did not tolerate any kind of nonsense. I would basically, long story short, in that 1 year, I kind of 4 times quadrupled my money and built partnerships with some of the biggest nightclubs, some of the biggest casinos in Goa. And, so with the money that I made, next year I took over a few other properties, took them. And then after about 2 years, I kind of came to the conclusion that this is not the industry I want to be in. I want to do something that's going to be a bit more valuable or create a little bit more impact. It doesn't need to be an impact kind of a business. So it doesn't need to be sustainability or social work, but it does need to be something that will genuinely have an impact and not something where I'm just making money. Because the challenge for me when I started my first business was to figure out whether I can make money or not, whether I'm suited for business or not. And once I knew that I could do that, so for me, the next thing was to learn more about business. So one fine day, I just got up and I said, I'm going to give the GMAT, I'm going to learn more about business. So 25 days later, I gave my GMAT exam. I got a 98 percentile score. I ended up at INSEAD somehow. I still don't know how I ended up at INSEAD because I did not have a college degree. I had never worked in a proper organization outside of the armed forces. And, so somehow I ended up at INSEAD, luckily. That was a 1 year of proper transformation, learned a lot. And then at the end of INSEAD, I was applying for jobs and I got about 150 rejections. Nobody wanted to hire, right? I was applying at the end, I was just literally like, any job that would come, please apply. Take me. For God's sake, take me. I can't end up after an MBA with a $150,000 loan and go back to Goa to do the same thing that I was doing before. right? And it was just a nightmare of a situation. And then somebody came and told me, you know what, Shayak, if you go and you start, you work with a startup, you're going to get good opportunities because people like you are scrappy, you're needed there. Started applying to startups, and then this one fine morning, I'm just putting on my shoes, wearing my clothes to go to the college, and somebody calls me up, and I'm talking to. I don't even know who I'm talking to, and one of the questions literally was, "So Shayak, if you had to start a new business in a new country in Africa, how are you going to do this?" And I'm like, "That's a weird sort of a question." So let me give. Whatever came to my mind, I wasn't really thinking very deeply about it. So I said, the first thing I'd do is I'd figure out who my main competition was, who the leadership in that company were, and then who were the people reporting one down from those leadership people. Hire those guys because they are the ones actually doing the work and not getting paid enough. Put them as leadership in my company, and I bet you in 1.5 years we'll have everything that you want. So at the end of the conversation, I come to know he's a group CEO of the Rocket Internet Group, and that's a big company. And he's like, "I want to hire you. You'll head, Asia for me." I'm like, "Okay, sure." I don't even know what the job is. So I'm like, "Okay, let me read up more about the company to begin with." So I read up about the company, and I was quite excited. They're doing a bunch of different things. And then 7 days later, he calls me up. He's like, "Shayak, I just figured out that you are in the Indian Navy." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, 25-30% of the job is in Karachi, Pakistan, and you won't be able to go there. So I'm like, "So what are you recommending?" So he's like, "I want you to come down to Paris and take over a new vertical that I want to start." So I was like, "Okay, sure." So I end up in Paris, and this new vertical he was talking about was called cross-border e-commerce. Nobody knew what to do with it. And so I traveled to Kenya, Mexico, God knows how many different countries. And there was no budget given, no idea given how to do it. And exactly in 3 months from the time I had joined, I had formulated the whole, master plan, how to build that. And in about a year, this was live in 21 countries across LATAM, Africa, South Asia, and China. And we grew the group revenues by 30% in that 1 year period, right? So that was a massive growth. So the group CEO was super happy, and he was like, "Okay, I want you to go and take over the Middle East now." And I'm like, "Not going to happen. I'm enjoying myself too much in this role. So I'm going to leave and I'm going to do this myself." Because to be honest, I kind of felt that, many things today where, we're seeing Web3 come up, right? So which is basically a big improvement on Web2. But if you really go back to Web2 and you see the inequities or the inequalities in Web2, you start realizing that there are massive conglomerates that control about 80-90% of the internet, right? You can do nothing without them. You can do nothing without the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles, and the Amazons of the world. The problem for small businesses was, and still is, that when they try to, when let's say they're trying to scale or they're trying to build a business, it's kind of like you have to pay a tax to build your business online, right? Whereas internet is supposed to be something which is equal, right, supposed to be created equal. So I was not very happy with this because I felt that all these marketplaces do you know that the success rate for a merchant on Amazon is less than 2%? Wow. Which basically means that 98% of the merchants who start on Amazon will not succeed, will not get orders, not sufficient enough. Only about 1.5% of the merchants are driving all the revenues on Amazon. And this is on a platform that's more efficient than, say, the local e-commerce marketplaces that you find. So I started digging a lot deeper into it. I built my own theses around it. I said, if you bring these things together, it'll work. And then I started thinking about it. So if I know this, then I'm sure there are other people who know this, who've been in the industry long enough. I've just started. Why hasn't somebody done that? Then I realized it's just incredibly difficult. So nobody bothered to do it because, look, if you really end up doing it, it's like that mythical crusade that you'll do, and then at the end of that, you'll have this huge pot of gold. But the problem is, along the way, there's nothing supporting you. Nobody wants to invest in something that's that big. Nobody wants to support something that's that big. So I said, you know what? I'm probably crazy enough to do something like that, so I'm going to try. So I came back to India against everybody's wishes. And, once again, everybody was super upset with me that you have this amazing job, the very high performing role and everything else. Why on earth would you come back and start a small business without any future? And that too, a business that's so crazy risky, right? So, I spent about 6 months, running from pillar to post, trying to set up the business, got everything going. And roughly about 5.5 years later today, we have about 100-member team. I wouldn't say that we've solved the problem, but I definitely say we are closer to solving the problem than anybody on earth has ever come. So we've actually managed to aggregate most of the big e-commerce channels on earth, create a layer on top. So if you're a brand, you can come on board. You can, from one place, create your accounts, your listing, your catalogs, your pricing, your inventory, your orders, your payments, your shipping, your fulfillment, your sourcing, your distribution, your supply chain, your marketing. So essentially everything that you need to do across all countries and all channels of sales can be done from our platform. And that's not the end of it. We actually created AI, artificial intelligence, because we realized that what I'm asking is a tall order. Even if I automate this, most people will not have the innate understanding to know how to price a product in a new country, how to go live in a new country. In order to do that, you need true AI. AI that takes one look at your, let's say these glasses that I'm wearing, and decides that, okay, this frame, this thing, these are the composition, this is how you do the description, this is how you optimize the image, this is what the price is, these are what the shipping options should be, this is where your inventory should be held. Can you imagine a world where that actually works? You can start a business online and be successful across 100 countries. And that's what I want to do. So we're not yet there, but I think what we built today is possibly the best that option that is out there. And we're working extremely hard to make sure that we achieve that goal, where you can come and build on top of our platform. Ours is an open source application, so you can come and build what you want on top of our platform. So yeah, I think that's a pretty long-winded introduction to how I got started in this. But I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, and I wanted to solve some genuinely big problem in this world. And I found my niche. And I think if I manage to solve this, it's going to make a massive impact.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible story, Shayak. Wow, I'm still kind of taking it in.
Thank you.
It really seems like, when you're the type of person that when you set your mind to something, doesn't matter if you've done it before, haven't done it before, you have support, you don't have support, you're going to get the job done.
It's true. Just to highlight that, when I was getting married, my mom wasn't very happy with it, right? So, and it's Asian families, right? So, there's a lot of thing about parents having a say in who you're getting married to, when you're getting married, and all that sort of stuff. So, I basically told my mom that, look, I'm going to get married one way or the other, and you want me to be happy. Now, you can make that decision 2 years from now and decide that I'm happy, or you can decide that I'm happy now. But I'm going to get married. Never mind what you think. And I did get married, and 7 days after I got married, she called me up and she said, we're having a reception and you have to come down, and we'll call the whole town. And so we had like 700 people come to the reception, but 7 days after my marriage, if once I make up my mind, I mean, I'm not saying that my mom's closed-minded. She's not. She's one of the most devoted people I know, but it was just that she had her mindset against it, and I had my mindset for it. And I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Never mind who says what.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But if we were to unpack, let's say like we were to peel the layer back on that. So you've done this several times. You've pretty much, I think there's like a quote that says, drop me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth, right? And you seem to be living that. But what are some like practical things? Like, what do you do? Like, what is involved in taking something from 0 to 100 within a month, into 3 months, within a year?
The most seasoned entrepreneurs will basically tell you that it boils down to 3 core factors. And I call it the PPM model. It's people, process, and money. It is always people, process, and money. There is nothing else to it. You can look at the product, you can look at the technology, you can look at everything under the sun. It boils down to just 3 things: people, process, and money. Now let's start with money, because that's where, by the way, this is a cyclic thing. So you can basically put people, process, and money, and it'll keep revolving around that. So the way it works is, if you've got money, you'll get people. And if you've got people, you'll get process, which will drive more money and more people and more process. And that's how it keeps going on. Now, I think for early entrepreneurs, it's difficult to understand this because, I've been there. So the first thing you start thinking is, how am I going to encourage somebody who's been at the head of, a large organization to come and join me? Because, I don't have the money to do that. Dude, you do. You do have the money to do that. It's just that you didn't realize that you've got the money to do that. Do you realize your company is theoretically worth anything that you think it's worth?
Right.
It's theoretically worth anything that you think it's worth. It's just basically dependent on you, what you think that company is valued at. And then it's about you being able to sell that vision to the people in front of you, so that person will come in. And I've been able to attract amazing people from the beginning of Eunimart to come and join, to come and build this with me, even when I had zero funding. And I've tried to remain bootstrapped for a very long time. For the first 3.5 years, we barely raised any money, right? So it's only in 2020 and 2021 that I've raised some money. I've not really raised a lot of money compared to most of the startups out there. And if I were to say that there's a direct relationship, there's a proportional relationship between the amount of money you raise and the amount of success you will see, then we should have been dead a long time back.
Right.
It's just not true. It is just not true. The point is that I think as founders, our culture is what becomes a company's culture. It drives the company. My culture has always been incredible amount of hard work, never taking no for an answer, and just going out there and doing whatever is required to get it done, right? And yeah, I'm going to hear a lot of no along the way, and I'm going to turn them into yes. That's basically how I work, and that's a process part of it, right? So when I start thinking about something, and I love thinking about first principles, anything you tell me, there's a whole lot of debate on the surface of it. But if you break it down into its core components and you keep asking that why, and you go to that core kernel of truth, you'll start realizing that all the debate on the surface is for people who don't understand what they're doing. At the core of it, the answer is quite simple, almost always. Let's say you want to build a spaceship, right? Why do you want to build the spaceship? Do you know why you want to build it? Everything else will follow from there. So the first principles way of thinking is a very, very critical mindset when you're trying to build a process. So money, people, process. The point is people overestimate how much others will want and underestimate what they're worth. Don't do that. Just because you're not Amazon today doesn't mean you can't be Amazon tomorrow. And just because somebody says that your company is not worth a lot doesn't mean they're right. More often than not, if you've got the guts, prove them wrong. Right? So it's people, process, and money. It follows that way.
I love it. I love it. You're getting me fired up here. If everyone that's listening in, if they saw me, I'm like smiling throughout this this conversation. And it's so true. I totally agree. Like it is, especially when in the early days too, it's that mindset that keeps you going. It's your own belief in yourself and what you're building and why you're building it that attracts everything else. And I think that's so true. And I think people get into the weeds of things and forget about that quite often.
They do. I mean, if you think about it, in the first 1 year of the business, I had no money. 18 months, I didn't pay myself anything. I had a student loan to pay. So I was kind of deferring my student loan. My interest rates were going up and the bank was calling me like, when are you going to start paying? And I was like, someday, hold on. And then I was staying in a kind of a dormitory. So what really happened was when I started the business, I didn't have money to take an office. So my wife's cousin, he had this reception free. So he had an office. He runs a construction company, an infrastructure company in India. So in Hyderabad, and I had the reception of that office. So I basically took the reception table, and converted it into my office. So I had like on one side, 2 of us were sitting, on the other side, 2 of us were sitting. So 4 people sitting on a reception table. Those reception tables where you'll have a receptionist sitting behind it. So 4 people sitting on the reception table. And the same office had a room behind where there were a couple of bunk beds where you can sleep. And it was meant for, overnight employees who would stay back. So I basically slept there for about a year. Okay.
Wow.
And I had made up my mind that I'm not going to give up because I had no money, because the student loan and NCR and everything else. And so I was like, I'm going to make this work no matter what. One day, I was sleeping, I woke up and I was very short on breath. I just couldn't breathe. And below me, my co-founder was sleeping. So I somehow managed to get down from the bed and the room was smelling weird, right? So I opened the door, somehow dragged myself to the bathroom, splashed water, drank some water from the tap. I could breathe. And then my brain started working and I realized there was carbon monoxide poisoning happening inside that room. So I rushed inside. My co-founder was unconscious. Wow. I pulled him out, dragged him out, and we went to the bathroom and I had to revive him. The air conditioner wiring was faulty. It was a cheap place. So the air conditioner wiring was faulty. And because of that thing had burned through and the door was closed. And those wires generate a lot of carbon monoxide when they burn. So that's what had happened. And a normal person in my place would have said, I'm not going to stay there anymore. Another time, I woke up in the morning and there was like water to my calves. It was
Yeah.
basically the bathroom had overflowed. I just took up a bucket and a mug and I cleaned up the whole office. So the point is, you go through this sort of nonsense, and at the end of it, you just realize that these are experiences. They build you, right? I think
Mhm.
one of my co-founders, she keeps telling me that, why did you bite so much when you know you can't chew that, right? So it's
Yeah.
not. And I'm like, at any point in life, if you're going to do exactly what you're capable of doing, you're only going to be at that point. You're never going to take a single step forward from there, right? So if you have to progress, you have to take a certain amount of risk, a certain amount of things that you have to chew, which you probably can't at that stage, and you have to grow into that ability to be able to chew on that stuff. So it's just, my problem is I took on too much, but I don't repent it because I've learned a lot along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. How do you keep yourself going though? I'm sure there are founders that are listening in that are probably going through that phase right now, that first year where they're just struggling. Like there's no money. How do you keep yourself going when everything, every day or every week, something just keeps going wrong?
Again, it's a function of three things, right? So it's a function of your why you're doing it. It's a function of who's with you, and it's a function of what, right? What are you going to do about it? So there is no easy answer to that, especially in the first phase of your business. Um, these three things are very critical. Do you know why you're doing it? If you know why you're doing it and that why is strong enough, it will take you through, right?
Mhm.
Ideologies have taken people through massive wars, right?
Right. Right.
It can take you through a little bit of financial crisis and a little bit of difficulty, provided you believe in it. That why is the first and the most important thing. The who is another very important thing. If you have the right people around you who are not very negative, it's very critical to have that, because I've had a bunch of people around me who were super negative, and if I wasn't so positive, I would have probably given up a long time back. So from time to time, you have to let those people go. They will do well in another place, in another organization, because there are a bunch of people who take it on themselves to point out everything that's wrong, and that's needed. But in the
Mhm.
first year, or especially the first part of your business, dude, everything is wrong. Everything is
Yeah.
wrong. You can go and tell your investors whatever story you want, but anybody who's been in the trenches knows for a fact that in the first year, everything is wrong. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay. You're just correcting, you're just firefighting at that point. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. You're just splashing all over. But the
Yeah.
point is, that's okay. That's okay. You're going to learn how to get that fire hose under your control. Now, having the right people around you is going to be critical at that period. And the what. The third part of it is very, very important. It's about first principles thinking. It's about breaking that problem statement down, looking at the components, prioritizing what you want to do. What is the most important thing that you can solve first? And every win counts. Now, say, for example, I wanted to build this platform that's going to solve this massive problem statement. Now, when I started off, everybody was like, are you going to build all that tech? How are you going to build all that tech? How is it possible to build all that tech? You have no
Mhm.
money to build all that tech. You have no money to hire that many developers. So what I did was, I basically said, money is not going to be directly correlated to the development that I do. Why? Because there are ways around it. So what I did was, I went to the local colleges and I picked up students who had just finished the third year, not the fourth year of engineering. So, and I spoke to the college deans and I said, you know what, I'm going to give your students the best education that you can. Let them work with me for 1 year as full-time interns. They'll not go to college for that 1 year, except the 7 or 10 days that you have exams. Other than that, they'll work full-time in my office. And I managed to convince 3 or 4 colleges to do that. And I picked up I interviewed like 2.5, 3,000 students, and I picked up about 20 of them. I was paying them like $150 a month. That's
Wow.
it. And that bunch of people built the first version of the platform that blew everybody out. Everybody was like, how on earth did you build something like this? How much did it cost you? How many years have you been building? Who
Yeah.
built it? It was those kids who came in from colleges. They were in the fourth year. They wanted to really do something, learn, experiment. I didn't hold them back. We did a whole bunch of things. A lot of things went wrong. Huh? It's not like
Mhm.
everything went right,
Right.
but we built it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So the
amazing.
what is
It's
important as well.
Yeah. So it's just it also sounds like there's just being resourceful. So what I'm curious about is So those were all like the early stage kind of stories with like scrappiness and all of that. Now you're 5 years in, you have, a 100 member team. How does that play a role in your, in your day-to-day today?
So my role in the early days used to be, doing everything, the one-man army out there. So HR, I'm there. There's no HR. CTO, no CTO. I'm the CTO. I don't know technology. I don't know head or tail about technology, but I'll learn and I'll become the CTO. And I became the CTO of the company for 4 years. Sales, there's nobody, no sales team. I'll do the sales. Marketing, there's no marketing. I'll go and create a profile on LinkedIn and I'll do the marketing myself. Those were the early days. Now, there's a defined marketing team with designers, content writers, digital marketers. There's a defined sales team. There's a defined partnerships team. There's a defined technology team with layers in it, with a CTO on top, architects, UX designers, product managers, project managers, team leaders, HODs. My role is now basically like a top to rotate between all the departments and keep solving problems and keep creating those linkages. Because all these people are operating in some sort of silos. And I'm the one person who has all the information possible. So it's my job to go and talk to all these department heads, all these team leaders, all these critical people who are creating a difference, ensure that they have the SOPs in place, ensure that I can automate as much of the task as possible so that I'm not focusing on lower order functions. I'm only focusing on the higher order functions. And once that bit is done, keep connecting on a daily basis, keep looking at all the potential ways that things could go wrong. Think about it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months ahead of time, prepare for it. And when the time is right, go and tell them to do those things. Work with them to bring those strategies to life. And remember, strategy is never built in a closed room. It's always built out there in the open with people. So that's my role. So every day I wake up around 6:30 in the morning. And the first 4 or 5 hours of the day is just calls for me. So when I wake up, I'll have like close to 150, 200 WhatsApp messages, maybe 100 emails, maybe, a certain number of messages on LinkedIn, Telegram. So I've got a bunch of things that I have to go through every morning when I wake up. So I go through them methodically. And while I'm doing it, I'll start communicating with people. And then I go out for a walk for about a couple of hours. And while I'm walking for that couple of hours, I'm talking to all the people. So I'm talking to HR and I'm asking, what happened to this recruitment? Didn't join? What is the alternative? What happened to this automation in the HRMS? Got done? Okay, great. Finance. What happened to that particular investor was supposed to come in? Did this invoice get cleared? Are we doing CTO? Okay, we are doing all these things. Tell me, give me the timelines. Talk to me about why this timeline was. So right now, my process is so different from where I used to be, 5.5 years ago, where I used to be one man army. Now they define people who are far better than me at those roles, right? So it's not my job to teach them. It's my job to connect them. It's my job to ensure that they're not held back. So kind of unfetter them, give them that opportunity to go do the job that they've been hired to do. So that's what I do from morning till night.
Amazing. I think there's just so much value in everything that you've said on this show so far, Shayak. That's I'm gonna go back and listen to this a few times over and take notes for sure. No, I've learned a lot here. And as we wrap this up, Shayak, what is one piece of advice that you would leave our early stage founders listening in?
So I think there are many skills that founders need to have. You need to know your domain. You need to know how to raise funding. And we're all weak in one or more things, right? So, for example, I've been weak in fundraising. I mean, I've raised a few $1 million for Eunimart, but I've not been as good as some other founders have been. And sometimes your success is, in the media at least, is measured by how much funding you've raised. Now, I'd say that you're always weak in something or the other. It's not very good to keep focusing on the things that you're not good at, to keep focusing on the negative things. I'd say the number one critical skill, or the most important critical skill that a founder can develop, is sheer perseverance, which basically, if you break it down, means how do you ignore the noise around you, ignore the negativity around you, and keep drilling that hole every single day until you hit oil. That's basically what you do on a daily basis. And you're going to keep doing it. And so don't worry about what you're weak at. Go focus on what you're good at and get that done, and just keep persevering, and you're going to get there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shayak. If our listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Or they'll find me on LinkedIn. My email ID is my first name dot last name, shayak.mazumder@eunimart.com. You can connect with me on multiple different channels, but yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shayak, for coming on the show.
Thanks, Shane.